My name is Adam Greco, and I'm part of the search discovery team that has built the product called Apollo. Apollo is an analytics management system that helps organizations increase their ROI from their investments in digital analytics, while at the same time helping reduce the ongoing cost of maintaining these analytics programs. Apollo provides a lot of really cool features. It starts by providing best practice business requirements or questions. These are based on over 2 decades of past implementations done by analytics experts like myself and other folks at Search Discovery. Apollo also architects the ideal solution design for each of these business questions so you can make sure that you're getting the best solution regardless of how much experience you have with your analytics tool. Apollo also automatically constructs a best practice data layer specification so you can provide that to your developers and make sure that it lines up with the solutions for all of your business questions. At the same time, Apollo configures your tag management system to make sure that that aligns with the data layer. At the same time, Apollo will update and maintain the settings in your analytics tool that are found in the administration area, such things as variable definitions and variable settings. Apollo also automates the data quality for your digital analytics so that you make sure that even down to the data layer level, you're making sure that you get the best data possible for you and your users. Once your implementation is complete, Apollo creates dashboards, reports, calculated metrics, segments, and all of this is done in an automated way so your users can get to the data they want as soon as possible. And of course, Apollo can be used on a recurring basis to make sure that anytime new business questions arise and you go through this same process, you can follow all of these steps and do it much quicker and with better quality. We recently shared an advanced preview of the Apollo product to a couple folks in the analytics industry. We're going to share some interviews with these folks so you can hear their thoughts on the new Apollo analytics management system. If you think back about the 20 years that have gone by, like what has it been like to manage digital analytics implementations, like the day-to-day of an implementation?
I would say that it's cumbersome enough that it's almost easy to avoid staying on top of it or managing it, especially kind of once you're done with that initial implementation, to the extent that I often don't feel that we're even maximizing our investment with analytics because it's just too arduous.
First of all, there's the whole phase of architecture where it's almost like a painter starts on a blank canvas. That's what it always felt like for me. A new implementation meant asking all the business stakeholders questions and mapping it to technology requirements. And it was starting over every time. That was the biggest thing. And then maintenance, of course, is a beast unto itself.
So managing a lot of different digital analytics implementations today for me is really like running behind a lot of different people, chasing different contractors, agencies, different implementation techniques across different digital properties. And it's really just a lot of stress. It's a lot of uncertainty to both me and the business to keep track of the status of every implementation and see if everything is working as expected. And it's really just a lot of hassle and a lot of maintenance just to know if everything is still working and to chase the right people if things break, which they always do at some point, and then to look at how you could fix it.
So why do you think that in the last 20 years, it hasn't gotten better and it hasn't changed?
Well, I think kind of a couple of different reasons that work together. One, there just really hasn't been a better way to track and manage analytics implementations other than dizzying spreadsheets that are tough to follow, tough to utilize, tend to be built from one person who maybe has a little bit of the structure or the design in their head, so not very easy for someone else to pick up. But what's the alternative to that? In addition, my experience with the 3 companies where I've done this is it can be difficult to justify an investment in a tool that's only helping your internal employees versus something that's customer facing.
The idea of starting every implementation from scratch, that has stayed the same from the beginning. And that has been the most overwhelming thing that occurred to me as you were showing me Apollo, was that it doesn't have to be, just because an implementation is custom, doesn't mean that we have to start from scratch every time we can't reuse
Yeah.
tried and true best practices and previously written code.
So I think there wasn't really a lot of evolution there, because especially with enterprise analytics systems, there's always the urge to build things your own way and to customize your implementation and make the most of the expensive product that you are buying. So there's not a lot of circulation around ideas and how to do stuff. And because of that, there isn't really a standard on how to do, for example, tracking for a site search on a digital property. So when people move around companies, there's kind of a slow evolution, I think, in regards to how people do things for themselves. But there's not really a evolution in regards to the industry as a whole and how we do things as a community, because we are so used to just doing our own stuff, doing our own thing, and building our implementation to our own needs, which is good, but doesn't allow us to learn from each other and build a standard across the whole industry.
So you had a sneak peek of Apollo. What were your kind of initial just impressions about how it could potentially change an organization's process for managing and improving a digital analytics implementation? And also, what do you think could be like the larger ramifications for the whole industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a complete game changer. I was just extremely impressed right out of the gate with exactly the pain points that the system does solve. So kind of what I just mentioned, some of that arduous labor of managing and maintaining an analytics implementation is a big one. But I think from my point of view, the biggest advantage of a tool like that is that it's solving that gap between an analytics team and a development team, which at least in my current role, can be weeks upon weeks for a product manager to try to facilitate the handoff between those two roles. And this, by automating some of that data layer work, that's just huge for smaller companies that just don't have the staff or the know-how, the knowledge to manage that.
So right after I saw Apollo for the first time, I talked to someone who was currently in the throes of that, of a new architecting and implementation project. And he just described the challenges of not only having to go to developers and describe to them what he needed, but he had to QA that, but also had to see if what they were delivering really matched up to what the business owners wanted in the first place. And so it was a real precarious dance of trying to get people aligned around projects where he was this middleman bridge. And that is something I think that is an art that is going to go away with Apollo. We don't need to necessarily, we don't need to keep reinventing best practices around answering certain questions. Start with the question and use the code that's already been developed for that. And you don't have to relay that to developers who are trying to get a picture. I think it's going to change everything as far as Adobe Analytics, how those implementation projects are crafted and changed. And I say Adobe Analytics because that's my background, but I see the same thing for the same kind of custom implementations that are done in other tracking systems like Google Analytics. I see this same approach really revolutionizing, what you and I have seen.
So my expectation when I would start using Apollo would be to just take a lot of the edge of trying to build a analytics implementation that is really specific to the business questions that you are trying to solve. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to achieve, and that's what we're trying to do, to really allow our business stakeholders to answer business questions. And once we standardize that process and say we want to track things in a different way than we do it right now because we want to standardize it, that would allow us to, evolve our own standards and do things in a way that is proven, that is standard across our whole industry, and to have confidence in what we're doing, because there's always a big uncertainty if we are still doing things kind of state of the art, if we're still up to standard with our own implementation. And I think Apollo would really help us to both keep our implementations in check and then also to get the most out of it. Because if we have a nice dashboard that is really tailor-made to the implementation that we have, then we can really get the most value out of the data that we collect.
So, when we showed you Apollo, obviously there's a lot of features in Apollo that we talk about. We add business requirements, we automate the tag management process, we automate the tagging, we do lots of things in there, help you build dashboards, calculated metrics. What do you think was kind of your favorite feature, or maybe top one or two features that you saw in Apollo?
Sure. So I have a favorite as a people manager and a personal favorite. So again, as a people manager, I'm most excited about sort of the data layer automation and tag management. We've had knockdown fights between developers and analysts about whose job it is to do some of that work. So the solution is it's no one's job, it's a machine. That's really appealing to me.
Yeah.
So as a team leader, that's probably my number one. On a personal level, though, I really loved a lot of the visualization tools and add-ins. I think that you guys did a great job thinking about the end user and what they would see and work with when they log into the system. So the variable map and how everything's being used with each other was really appealing to me. And just the fact that I can hand the keys over to some of these stakeholders. So, my product owner for the app, for example, if he had given me a business requirement, could just hop in, look at that requirement and figure out how to access a dashboard. The reality is right now, those things are very far apart in terms of timeline and accessibility. You kind of start your process with a business requirements doc, but that end person who requested it doesn't really know how to hop into analytics and get that answer without a ton of, human involvement in the middle in an ongoing way. So just the fact that all of that is just completely simplified, and I can allow people to use reports and analytics without it requiring someone on my team to build something simple that answers a requirements question is really appealing to me.
First of all, not having to rebuild that code for every business requirement, that is huge. I have made some terrible mistakes as a kind of on the fly coder who learned JavaScript to do this kind of tracking. And there were some things that were just outside my understanding, and I broke as many things as I fixed during that time. So I think a lot of the bumps in the road for an implementation are gonna go away. The time it takes, I think, is gonna be the primary impact at the beginning, just because it is, it can go on for months. And I think, what you showed me could have changed months worth of work down to weeks or even days. And then, but on an ongoing basis, I love the aspect of having a living requirements doc, a living place that's connected to your APIs. It's not just an Excel document that somebody pulled up and worked on a year and a half ago, and we have to dig up because, those things have never worked for long term. And I really think Apollo's, as a true version control of your implementation, it can mediate the fact that people like you and I spend maybe 18 months with a specific client before we move on to our next gig. And then, and it's going to prevent the next analyst from coming on board and starting everything from scratch, ripping up all the tracks and starting over.
So I think when I were to pick my favorite feature, then it would actually be two features, because the end-to-end approach of having both the business questions that we're trying to solve on one hand, and then the complete dashboard at the end of the implementation, the data collection, is really what sells it to me, because then we don't only have the correct data and have everything measured in the correct way, but we also have a way to actually analyze the data and make it actionable, and that fits perfectly for our implementation. So the end-to-end approach and the real feeling of we're doing things in a correct way, we're measuring the right things, we're doing it all up to standard, and then we can actually look at all the data in a specified way, in a standardized way across the whole business. That's what really sells it to me, because it kind of takes the risk of the business to have on one side the perfect data, but not a perfect dashboard for it, and on the other hand has the most sophisticated dashboard with broken data. And so Apollo solves those issues on all ends for me.
We'd like to thank everyone who agreed to do these interviews and share their thoughts on our new Apollo product. If you'd like to see a demonstration of Apollo and see how it could possibly help your organization, feel free to go to searchdiscovery.com/Apollo.
X minus 3, 2, 1, 0.